Sure. Here's section 1 of your script with a minimum of 760 words, written in a tight, emotionally focused, and cinematic narration style, ideal for a faceless storytelling video. No fluff, no repetition, just quality-driven narrative as requested. I never planned to be part of anyone's story. I was just a housekeeper, invisible, unnoticed, someone who quietly moved in and out of rooms cleaning up after other people's lives. For 3 years, I worked for Daniel and Claire, a couple that, from the outside, looked like the picture of perfection. He ran a successful firm. She taught yoga, volunteered, and hosted wine nights. Their house was spotless. Their smiles were curated. But silence always lingers where love once lived. My room was tucked away at the far end of the house, just beyond the kitchen. I liked it there. It kept me out of the way. Claire hardly acknowledged me. Daniel was polite, always a quiet thank you or a nod when we crossed paths. That was it. I cooked, cleaned, kept their world turning, while mine stayed still, but things changed when I started noticing patterns. Claire's perfume was always strongest on the days she left in the late afternoons, not for errands, but for personal training sessions. She'd come home flushed, hair tousled in a way that didn't look like post-workout exhaustion. Once, I brought her fresh towels to the guest bathroom and heard hushed laughter. A man's voice. Then silence. She stepped out seconds later, alone, barely meeting my eyes. Daniel, meanwhile, was unraveling in plain sight. He came home later and later, yet never with the scent of alcohol or another woman. Just exhaustion. He stopped waiting for Claire at dinner. I'd often find untouched plates in the fridge. One evening, he asked me if I thought Claire seemed distant. I froze. That wasn't a question an employer asked his housekeeper. I told him I didn't know. He nodded, almost expecting that answer, and thanked me anyway. I started seeing the emotional gap stretch like a slow tear in fabric. They no longer argued, they avoided each other. On some days, I'd find Daniel working in the garden in complete silence while Claire talked for hours on the phone, giggling like a teenager. I'd turn away, pretending not to hear anything. That was safer, but pretending not to notice didn't mean I didn't feel. I began to sense a tension building, not just between them, but inside me. I told myself it wasn't my business. Still, I watched point one Friday afternoon. Claire was heading out. Her gym bag was unusually light. As she passed me, her phone buzzed, and she glanced at it with a small smile. She didn't say goodbye. I watched the door close behind her and felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Later that day, while cleaning the upstairs bathroom, I noticed a pair of unfamiliar men's shoes in the guest bedroom closet. Size 11. Definitely not Daniel's. I never said anything. I kept the secret even though no one asked me to. But silence can rot your insides. Daniel started talking more. Not in full conversations, just fragments. A story about how he met Claire at a bookstore. A memory about their first apartment. One night, he told me he used to leave notes in her lunchbox every day, even after they got married. He laughed a little. Then he got quiet. I don't think she reads them anymore, he said. I didn't know what to say back. One night, it was raining hard. Claire hadn't come home yet. Daniel walked into the kitchen, soaked. He looked defeated. Do you ever wonder if people just fall out of love? He asked. I dried a plate and nodded slowly. He poured himself a drink and asked if I wanted one. I said no. He poured a second glass anyway and set it beside me. He talked. Really talked. Told me he knew something was wrong but didn't want to dig too deep. He wasn't ready for the answers. His eyes were tired, like someone who had spent too long pretending everything was fine. I listened. I didn't try to fix anything. I couldn't. But I think, for a moment, that was enough for him. That night, as I got ready for bed, I heard Claire come in. She didn't say anything to Daniel. Didn't even ask if he was awake. Just went straight to the master bedroom. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but my mind kept replaying everything. The silence, the half-truths, the loneliness. Somewhere deep down, I started wondering how it would feel to be noticed. Not as the help. Not as someone forgettable. But as a woman, and for the first time, I asked myself a question I wasn't ready to answer. If I knew what Claire was doing, why was I starting to feel sorry for Daniel? Let me know when you're ready for section 2. Here is section 2 of your script with minimum 760 words, keeping the narration crisp, emotionally potent, and without any repetition or filler. This continues directly from section 1. It was a Saturday night when everything tipped. The kind of night where the air feels heavier than usual, like something's about to snap. Claire had gone out earlier in the evening. Said she had a dinner meeting with some wellness group. She barely looked at Daniel when she said it. Didn't wait for a reply. The storm started around 9. Thunder rolled through the windows. I was wiping down the counters when Daniel walked in, soaked again, no umbrella, suit wrinkled. He didn't say anything for a while. Just stood by the doorway, dripping, staring at the darkened hallway like he was waiting for someone who was never coming home. Then he spoke. Quietly. "I saw her," he said. "She was with someone." He didn't look at me. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. He poured 2 drinks and handed me one. I hesitated, but this time, I took it. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe everything that happened after started with that one small decision, not the kiss, not the night, just saying yes to a drink. We sat at the kitchen table. No lights, just the dim glow of the range hood and the flicker of lightning outside. He told me he'd followed Claire earlier that evening. Said he couldn't take the guessing anymore. He saw her with the same man from the gym, Ethan. They were laughing, touching, comfortable in a way that made him feel like an outsider in his own marriage. He didn't cry. That somehow made it worse. I told him I was sorry. That's all I could say. It felt useless, but it was honest. He looked at me for a long time. Not in a romantic way. Just a long, tired gaze, like someone finally seeing what they'd been ignoring. "You ever feel like you've been disappearing in front of someone for years?" he asked. I nodded. He was drunk, but not sloppy. Just unraveling. Then the silence came. Not the awkward kind, the dangerous kind. The kind that hums between 2 people who've crossed into something they can't explain yet. He reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. It was subtle. Warm. I should have pulled away. I didn't. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was the feeling of being chosen, even if only for a moment. I don't know. I just know that the distance between us vanished faster than I could think. The kiss wasn't planned. It wasn't slow. It was desperate. A collision of regret and need. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't stop it. Neither did he. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. He led me upstairs, not to their bedroom, to the guest room, the one Claire had once shared with Ethan. That realization didn't hit until the next morning. I left early. Slipped back into my room before sunrise. I stared at the ceiling, wide awake, numb and alert all at once. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel wanted. I felt like something fragile had broken inside both of us, and I wasn't sure if it was guilt or truth I was lying in. Claire came home before noon. Bright, refreshed, carrying a smoothie and yoga mat. She didn't say anything unusual. Daniel didn't confront her. He barely spoke at all. The air in the house had changed, still, but heavy. No shouting. No accusations. Just this quiet, loaded tension. I busied myself with laundry, dishes, anything to avoid being in the same room with either of them. But I couldn't avoid what I found next. While putting fresh towels in Daniel's office, I noticed the drawer under his desk was slightly open. A single edge of a photograph stuck out. I didn't mean to look. But I did. Photos. Claire and Ethan. At a resort, possibly a spa, intimate poses, beachside dinners. More than just a fling. He'd known for longer than I thought. He had proof. And he'd kept it hidden. Not to confront her, but almost like he needed to remind himself that he wasn't imagining it. I stood there holding evidence I wasn't supposed to see, having shared a night I wasn't supposed to live. Suddenly, I wondered, had he known what he was doing with me? Was I part of some test, or just another temporary solution to the ache he couldn't name? That question stayed with me. Still does. I didn't feel like a housekeeper anymore. I felt like a crack in the wall. A symptom of a sickness that had already spread too deep, and even as I tried to clean the house, wipe away the dust and rearrange pillows, something inside me had shifted. I couldn't undo it. I couldn't take that night back. And I wasn't sure if I even wanted to, but I knew something else, something even more dangerous than guilt. I didn't regret it yet. Not then. Let me know when you're ready for section 3. Here is section 3 of your script with a minimum of 760 words, concluding the story with emotional weight, clean pacing, and a clear sense of aftermath and introspection, all delivered without repetition or filler. As requested, the house didn't feel the same after that night. Every room held something unspoken. I could feel Daniel watching me, not with desire, not even with guilt, just distance. Like we'd both walked through a fire and now stood on opposite ends of the ash. Claire carried on as if nothing had changed. She smiled more. Laughed on the phone. Left the house often. She never asked where Daniel was or why he barely responded to her anymore. I expected something to happen, a confrontation, an apology, a meltdown. But instead, everything stayed quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that wraps around your throat slowly. I kept moving through the days like I was sleepwalking, doing chores with robotic precision just to feel useful. But I didn't belong there anymore. I knew it. And eventually, so did he. One morning, Daniel called me into his office. He didn't waste time. I'm divorcing her, he said, eyes fixed on a framed photo of them from years ago. She won't fight it. I nodded, unsure what to say. He didn't mention that night. Not once. But the silence between us carried its weight. He leaned back in his chair and looked at me with tired eyes. You deserve better than being caught in the middle of someone else's mess. It wasn't rejection. It was release. And strangely, I was grateful for it. I packed my things later that evening. One suitcase. A small box of books. Nothing more. I had never really settled in, not in the way people do when they believe they are home. As I folded my clothes, I found a note under my pillow, my handwriting, scribbled weeks ago. A grocery list. It felt like someone else's life. Claire passed me in the hallway without saying a word. Not a glance. Not a smirk. Nothing. And that felt worse than anger. It was confirmation I'd never truly existed in her world. Daniel walked me to the front door. He didn't offer to stop me. Didn't ask where I was going. Just handed me a folded envelope with a month's extra pay and whispered, "Take care of yourself." I nodded. No tears. No dramatic goodbye. We had already said too much, even when we said nothing. I stepped outside into the evening light and never looked back. It took time to feel human again. I moved to a different city. Found a small job cleaning private apartments. Nothing fancy, but quieter. Safer. The kind of work that lets you fade in and out without ever getting pulled into anyone's personal disasters. But some nights, I think about that house. About the woman who never looked me in the eye, the man who tried to make sense of betrayal by creating one of his own, and the version of myself I barely recognized anymore. I used to wonder if I ruined something, if I crossed a line I had no right approaching. But now I know I didn't ruin anything. I was just standing at the edge when it finally fell apart. That marriage was already over. I just happened to be there when the silence became unbearable. I don't romanticize what happened. I don't excuse it either. I was lonely, vulnerable, seen at the wrong moment by someone unraveling just as fast as I was. We both reached for something warm in the cold. That doesn't make it right. But it makes it real. I never heard from Daniel again. No calls. No messages. I don't know if he stayed in that house or sold it. I don't even know if Claire stayed with Ethan. That part of the story no longer belongs to me. Now, I keep to myself. I work. I read. I avoid messy situations. But I don't pretend anymore that I'm invisible. I know who I am. I know what I've done. And I know I survived it. Sometimes, when I pass by happy couples in cafes or see people laughing through apartment windows, I feel a strange calm. Not jealousy. Not regret. Just awareness. A quiet knowing that love isn't always loud or clean or fair. Sometimes it's fragile. Sometimes it's broken before you even realize you're holding it. I was just a housekeeper. That's what I told myself. That's what they saw. But that night, that single moment, made me a mirror for everything they were afraid to face. And in the process, it forced me to face myself. I left with nothing more than what I walked in with. But for the first time, I knew I was done being part of someone else's secrets. I didn't need to be noticed. I just needed to be free. Let me know if you'd like the full video narration script version with cues, or want to start another story. Here is section 4 of your script with a minimum of 760 words, keeping everything tight, direct, emotionally grounded, and consistent with the tone and pacing of the previous sections, with zero repetition or filler. 2 years passed before I ever saw either of them again. It wasn't planned. Just chance. I had taken a different kind of job by then, private home care for an elderly woman in a quieter part of the city. It paid well. Gave me peace. No mess. No blurred boundaries. No doors left half open. One afternoon, I stepped out for groceries and saw Claire across the street. She hadn't changed much. Still polished. Still composed. But there was something in her expression, less sharp, more distracted. She didn't notice me. Or maybe she did and just chose not to react. Either way, I didn't approach her. I didn't need anything from her. No confrontation. No closure. She had nothing to take from me anymore. Later that night, I found myself thinking not about what we did to each other, but about what we never said. Claire never asked Daniel why he drifted. Daniel never asked Claire why she needed someone else. I never asked myself why I stayed so long in a house built on silence. We all played our parts until the curtain dropped. And when it did, no one clapped. We just exited quietly. There was a time I believed infidelity was only about lust or weakness. Something physical. But it's not. It's about loneliness. It's about people reaching outside their lives because they're too afraid to speak honestly inside them. Claire didn't betray Daniel because she stopped loving him. She betrayed him because she stopped seeing him. And Daniel didn't fall into my arms because I was irresistible. He fell because I was there. Present. Listening. Real. That's how it happens. Quietly. Then all at once. I used to replay that night in my mind, wondering if I could have stopped it. But the truth is, it wasn't about stopping anything. It was about two people who had both already let go of the people they were pretending to love. Now, I live differently. I keep boundaries. I protect my space. I stay out of people's shadows. There's something freeing about being able to say no, about not confusing someone else's crisis for your calling. I don't clean up broken things anymore unless they belong to me. I once thought invisibility was safety. That if I stayed quiet and useful, I could avoid being hurt. But I learned that invisibility is just another form of silence. And silence is where betrayal begins. Claire ignored what she didn't want to fix. Daniel waited for answers instead of asking questions. I stood in their silence, mistaking proximity for purpose. We were all wrong. One evening, months later, I saw Daniel again. Not in person. In a photograph online. A mutual acquaintance shared it. He was at some business event, smiling, standing next to a woman I didn't recognize. She looked kind. Steady. The kind of woman who probably listened to him. I stared at that photo for too long. Not because I missed him. I didn't. But because I finally saw him as someone separate from my story. Just a man who made a mistake during the collapse of his life. I shut the laptop and made tea. That was all. No spiral. No longing. Just acceptance. I don't keep anything from that time, no letters, no keepsakes, no souvenirs of who I had to be in their house. That woman no longer lives in me. I don't need to remember the pain to understand the lesson. Sometimes you're written into someone else's story for a single page. Sometimes you're just the consequence of their silence, but that doesn't mean you have to carry the weight forever. I moved again last spring. Smaller place. Brighter windows. Plants I've actually managed to keep alive. It's quiet, but not the same kind of quiet. This silence doesn't feel like a warning. It feels earned. Honest. Sometimes I catch myself watching people again, couples at parks, strangers in cafes, and I wonder how many of them are performing love, and how many are living it. I don't judge. I just observe. That's the only part of me that never changed, because even now, I understand people in a way they rarely understand themselves, and when I close my eyes at night, there's no guilt. No flashbacks. No shame. Just a simple truth. I was just a housekeeper, until that night, but I never let that night define me, and I never will. Let me know if you'd like to continue this story further, expand into voiceover formatting, or start a new concept entirely.